Hello, welcome. How are we to understand the essential non-duality? The best way of approach is with a serene mind. A serene mind, in this context, is a mind that is willing to give some attention to the deeper philosophical questions about life. By philosophical questions is meant those questions which seek to achieve a detached overview of life as a whole. Their aim is to find out whether there is not more to our experience than meets the eye. What meets the eye, so to say, is what might be called duality. Duality doesn't just mean the existence of two principles like mind and matter, the world and its creator, or the pairs of opposites like good and evil. What duality signifies is the almost infinite variety of phenomena that we experience as individuals and normally take on face value. As for our own position, we don't question our own separateness as an individual, and we take it for granted that the multiplicity that we experience represents the final fact of how things are. Our inquiry into non-duality challenges this so-called fact of multiplicity by raising two questions in particular. The first question is there a deeper reality underlying the whole universe? A reality which is one without a second, and which is the essence of our experience, and is ever complete and fulfilled? The second question comes nearer home. We ask, is there in our own being, with its many qualities and multiplicity of thoughts, something that corresponds to that deeper reality underlying the whole universe? Is there? This inquiry into a deeper reality assumes that such a discovery is not of merely academic interest, but leads to the greatest fulfillment possible. All this suggests that the non-dual philosophy may claim our interest for several reasons. Though ancient, its wisdom is timeless. It is as fresh and relevant now as it was in former ages. Though its original texts, the Upanishads, are composed in Sanskrit, they are not at all sectarian. Their message is universal, open to all those who wish to study and practice the teachings. There is a way of practice based on well-tried traditional methods. These methods will enable us to cultivate our mind so that we grow in wisdom towards realization. Not least, the appeal of the teachings is that they have a definite goal. This goal is to free us from all fear and suffering by awakening in us knowledge of the wholeness and transcendence of our own innermost being, of what we truly are. The way of non-duality is therefore practical. it has a fruit, a definite result or reward. Its main concern is ultimate truth, not as a matter of intellectual speculation, but as a direct, irreversible experience. This philosophy is referred to by the term darshana, a Sanskrit word which means sight or seeing. This word indicates that the experience of non-duality is immediate and direct, not dreamlike or tentative. The knowledge it reveals is as definite as sense perception, yet more true and real, because it is free from the transiency of sense experience, and also free from the errors and distortions that sometimes condition our way of looking at things. What is it that inspires such an inquiry, leading to such a far-reaching outcome? We might ask a parallel question. What prompts small children to ask question after question, some of which are truly philosophical in their implications? The prompter or inspirer is our own deeper nature, which desires expansion in knowledge and abhors the feeling of not knowing. But this pure spirit of inquiry, which manifests so early in life, is usually eclipsed by other factors. Those in whom it continues to burn brightly become lifelong questioners and investigators. Ultimately, this questioning tendency brings them into touch with sources of higher knowledge. This does not mean that only the non-dual teachings can point us towards knowledge of truth. As we said, the teachings are universal and have their counterpart to a greater or lesser degree in the deepest sayings of other great traditions. In the New Testament, we find sayings such as, "Know ye the truth, and the truth shall make you free. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Seek, and ye shall find." Other religions and other schools of higher wisdom echo the principle that the kingdom of heaven, what is real and true in the deepest sense, is to be found within our own being. Let us return to the philosophy of non-duality and its practical nature. Here we find the teachings are the result of a sustained and triumphant inward quest. That quest is to discover who or what we really are in the deepest sense as conscious beings. It's a quest motivated, as we said before, by the urge to expand in knowledge. But by expansion in knowledge is not meant accumulating more and more facts about non-duality and other philosophical subjects. It is rather the search for the essence of knowledge, the ultimate depth of understanding that will satisfy forever our desire to know. In the Upanishads, it is called the knowledge through which one becomes all-knowing. Therefore, our quest is for knowledge of the essence, the substance, that in us which can never be erased. This leads to the idea that true knowledge, or truth, or reality generally, must be something which is unaltered in the three periods of time: past, present, and future. But this quality of unalterability is not enough to foster our sustained interest in this quest. The way of non-duality also meets the challenge of how to deal with suffering, which is part and parcel of every human life. One of the early teachings viewed suffering as being of three kinds. Firstly, the suffering that is inflicted on us by other creatures, not least our fellow human beings. Secondly, suffering that springs from our own body and mind, like illness or mental distress, often the consequence of our own actions. Thirdly, the suffering brought about by natural disasters. If suffering can be viewed objectively and classified in this way, we are already, in a sense, rising above it. There is the possibility to calmly looking at the situation and of not being wholly identified with it. So we need to view suffering. So we need not view suffering with resignation, still less with despair, but as a practical problem that has to be dealt with. The ultimate aim of the non-dual teachings is to realize the greatest freedom possible. Its practice meets our need for the ongoing expansion of knowledge, for communion with truth and beauty, the kingdom of heaven within, and not least our natural desire to find a way of freeing ourselves from suffering. This is achieved not by going to a different place, but by finding a region within our own being that suffering itself cannot penetrate. The Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad refers to the highest knowledge as the death of death. Just as water extinguishes fire, so does the higher knowledge banish death. It does so by awakening us to a deeper reality within our own being, which is totally beyond the range of change and decay. We have referred to an inner quest or inquiry. Obviously, it is not the case of simply closing our eyes and looking within. For when we do look within, all we notice are our own thoughts and feelings. More often than not, our present mental activity gives no hint of any higher experience awaiting discovery within us. How to search more effectively? One lesson at least can be learned at an early stage. The idea of researching the mind while it remains in its active, uncontrolled state will not take us very far. Surveying our thoughts may be interesting, but non-duality is a development towards a goal that satisfies the deepest human urge. Any study of non-duality is valuable because it gives us new perspectives on life. But its true value comes through when we make the goal of liberation our own personal goal, supported by our own regular practice. Practice also means flexibility, the willingness to adopt new techniques if these are potentially more fruitful. Through our own practice, we come to realize that our progress is not just gaining the ability to turn away from outer things. It is also necessary to learn how to withdraw our attention from the inner mental activity that persists even when the doors and windows of the senses, so to say, are closed. For our mind is still full of images that make it restless and unfocused. These thoughts of various kinds keep our attention on the mind's surface and stand in the way of our deeper understanding. So it is essential that the mind filled with thoughts should be quietened. In quietude, we can determine with certainty whether there really is a deeper principle concealed beneath the flux and fullness of our mind. So our inner inquiry is aided and advanced by our ability to silence the mind, or at least to quieten it sufficiently to allow a deeper focus for concentration. Let us now pause briefly and reflect on this meditation text, which indicates our way forward. Om. I withdraw my consciousness from the senses and the mind and rest in the peace and bliss of my true nature. Om. I withdraw my consciousness from the senses and the mind and rest in the peace and bliss of my true nature. Om. Om. also our inquiry is undertaken with a view to expand our knowledge, to discover the kingdom of heaven within, and to find a way out of suffering. So far, it may look as if we are capable of pursuing all these aims unaided, relying on our own known powers, with no higher source of help. But this is not the case. The helping power, ever present, supporting all, is called Brahman, meaning the Absolute. It includes, yet transcends, the conception of God. And in that inclusion, there are teachings which give our mind useful ways of contemplating the Supreme Being. Such teachings affirm that this Supreme Being or Presence is the mighty, immutable power in which the universe lives, moves, and continues in a state of harmony and order. This great force is our dependable helper, and we can look upon it as an ever-present refuge, which relieves us of doubts and anxieties, and inspires us with new strength for our ongoing quest. The Supreme Reality or power is, in a certain sense, within all the appearances and living beings. It is, so to say, the being of our being, and is the most immediate and direct element in our experience. It is the inner ruler of all, the divine principle or essence that ever dwells in the human mind, but whom the mind does not recognize. Such is the inner ruler, our own immortal self. This kind of insight, this interiority of the supreme power, is found in the Old English prayer, which begins with the words, God be in my head and in my understanding. God be in mine eyes and in my looking. From the non-dual perspective, we don't need to pray to the divine to enter into our being. What is necessary is to recognize this presence as fundamental to our nature at all times. Our task is to adjust our thinking, which also means quietening our thoughts, so that this self-evident truth may no longer be concealed by the inner distractions and restlessness. Therefore, in the non-dual tradition, there is a scope for adoration of the Supreme Being, and for viewing that being as a friend and helper on our path. As another verse states, it is the protector of all beings. For Brahman is present as the indispensable and inextinguishable power in us. And as the inner ruler, it is the supervisor and guardian, so to say, of our own progress in understanding. But the question which really needs to be clarified is, what is the relationship between the quietened mind, intent on fathoming the secrets of the inner world, and the great reality Brahman, the inner ruler of all? To answer this question, not just theoretically, but as a matter of experience, we have to go on deepening our meditation and study. At the same time, a kind of partnership is established with the Supreme Power in its apparent role as the inner ruler. It means inner communion with that power in meditation and visiting its presence at the core of our own being. We will then come to realize that Brahman is not some abstract metaphysical principle, essentially separate from us. All being, including our own being, has its source in the being of Brahman. Therefore, Brahman, the Absolute, is the being of our being. What is to be realized is the perfect identity of our innermost self with that supreme reality on which the whole universe rests. In the light of our own deeper inquiry, in inner silence, we can also come to appreciate how our true self is not just the being of our being, but our very consciousness, the conscious light behind the mind, before which mental activity takes place, and in whose light it is revealed. Still deeper reflection brings to light a distinction, a fundamental difference between the conscious light and the mental world it lights up. We become aware of what seem to be two selves, or rather two different levels within ourselves. One of them is the ground of pure consciousness, unchanging, without qualities, never viewed objectively, so that nothing relating to individual existence can be said about it. This is the real self, immutable, pure consciousness, never appearing objectively in the mind, because it is never an object. And because it is not an object, it is ever free from qualities. And this means it is ever free from limitations. But what about the self it witnesses? Our individuality with its unique collection of qualities, qualities of character, of appearance, qualities derived from our education and experience. To look at this self in a wider context, we can say that one thing seems obviously true. It is that we live and function in a world that is full of variety, which is another word for duality. And as human beings, human minds, we also vary from one another. Each of us is unique and different from the rest. We may agree with each other about certain things. We may have much in common. But our mind functions as a collection of personal qualities. And on this level, all minds are different and unique. It cannot be otherwise. But to what extent are we really conditioned by this difference and this duality? To whom do all these qualities really belong? Our sense of humor, our shyness, our pride, our likes and dislikes. All these characteristics, which seem to make us what we are revealed under the light of the innermost witnessing consciousness. But is that witnessing consciousness also tied to an individuality, like the qualities we mentioned just now? Or to put it another way, is this ultimate conscious self also a shareholder in the abundance of qualities that comprise our personality? No. It is beyond personality. And as it is our real self, then we too, in our ultimate nature, are beyond personality. Being beyond personality, we are beyond limitations, free from the limited consciousness of self and other, of me and you, of us and them. All qualities and limitations belong to what is witnessed by the conscious self, never to the conscious self itself. The conscious self has no boundary, because boundaries belong only to what it views as a witness, the world of qualities. Our investigations have brought to light a principle within us that is different, that is free from change, free from qualities, free from limitations. We now find ourselves on the verge of realizing that dimension of self which cannot be affected by suffering. This is because suffering too is known objectively as part of that field of experience that is witnessed by the conscious self, but which never affects that self in any way. The question remains, what is the relationship between this transcendent principle, the conscious self, the witness consciousness, and Brahman, the supreme reality, which in a certain sense is present within us as the inner ruler? We said that this Brahman includes the concept of God and also transcends it. When viewed as the inner ruler, Brahman is precisely that, the inner ruler of all. When Brahman is considered in its ultimate nature as transcendent and without attributes, then there is nothing to distinguish Brahman from our own true self, which is pure consciousness, is also transcendent and free from attributes. When we are identified with our individuality and our conviction is that there is a God who we can have ideas about, there is duality. This is a provisional stage in our understanding. There is also the deeper standpoint in which we realize our identity with the infinite consciousness in its freedom and perfection. For from the ultimate standpoint, there is no duality whatsoever. What is revealed is the eternal identity of our own innermost consciousness and the Absolute, the one reality underlying and animating the whole cosmos. As a classical text expresses it, there is no non-dual reality except the self. There is no self except the eternal witness. The non-dual philosophy is summed up in the great sentence from the Chandogya Upanishad, that thou art. That is, your true self, in essence, is not different from the ultimate reality which underlies and reveals the entire world of appearances. This is the eternal wisdom that brings complete fulfillment, because it awakens us to what we truly are in essence, always have been, and ever shall be. Thank you for your attention. See you again soon.